72 hours after that final round, fans were not talking about the winning score. They were talking about one moment, and nobody was willing to say whose fault it was. Not the player, not the official, not the tour. And that silence, that very specific, very deliberate, three-way silence is the most revealing thing about what actually happened on that Sunday. Because when something in professional golf is genuinely clean, people say so, players say so, officials clarify. The tour puts language around it that closes the conversation. None of that happened here. What happened instead was a ruling that moved quickly, produced a meaningful advantage, and then disappeared into the machinery of a final round that had a tournament to finish and a trophy to hand out. The gallery felt it in real time, the kind of stillness that means something landed wrong and nobody is ready to name it yet. By the time fans at home had the clips, the angles, the frame-by-frame breakdowns, the leaderboard was already final. The moment was supposed to be buried under the result. It wasn't buried. It was waiting. And the question it kept producing, underneath every replay, every thread, every comparison to every similar ruling this season that went a different direction, was not about cheating. It was about something the tour still has not answered. Would another player have gotten that call? Scotty Scheffler arrived at that final round exactly where the world's #1 player is supposed to arrive, in contention, composed, and dangerous. Every fan watching knew the tournament ran through him. Every broadcast decision reflected it. Every camera followed him. And then came the moment. A situation developed, the kind that happens in professional golf and gets resolved quietly when the outcome is simple. An official was called, a ruling was made, and Scotty played on. Except the gallery did not move on, and neither did the people watching at home, because something about the way that ruling landed, the speed of it, the direction of it, the specific relief it produced, did not sit right with people who have watched this sport long enough to know what a standard ruling looks like. Do you think marquee players get different treatment on tour? Tell me right now in the comments, and subscribe, because what comes next is where this story stops being a feeling and starts being a case. That feeling the gallery had, it was not wrong. Now here is what this section is not going to do. It is not going to walk you through the rulebook like a lesson, because the rulebook is not where this story lives. The rulebook is actually where this story hides. What the rule in question does is create a window, a zone of official discretion where the man on the ground, the certified rules official standing next to the player, makes a determination based on what he observes, what he judges, and what he believes the rule intends to protect. On paper, that system is designed for fairness. In practice, it is only fair if the window opens the same way for everyone who stands in front of it. What Scotty received was relief, a specific determination that his situation qualified, that the conditions present at that moment met the threshold the rule requires. The official looked, assessed, and said yes, and Scotty's ball moved to a more favorable position. Now, the word favorable is doing a lot of work in that sentence because the improvement was not marginal. The lie Scotty played from after the ruling was meaningfully better than the lie he would have faced without it. The kind of difference that at that level on that Sunday with those stakes does not stay invisible. Fans saw it. Players who watched the broadcast saw it. And the ones who had been on tour long enough, the ones who had stood in similar spots and received a different answer, they saw it most clearly of all because they had a reference point. And that reference point is where this ruling stops being a judgment call and starts being a pattern. Patterns are built one ruling at a time. And this is the section where the story changes. And because this is where it stops being about Scottie Scheffler specifically and starts being about every player who stood in a comparable situation this season and heard a different word from a different official. Maybe not allegedly, documented, on record, part of the same tour, the same season, the same rule book that player asked. The official assessed. The answer was no. Same gray area, same window of discretion, different outcome. Now, one denial could be a different read of the same rule. Officials are human. Situations are never perfectly identical. Golf gives itself that argument, and sometimes it is even a valid one. But then it happened again. And now you do not have two officials making independent judgment calls. You have a pattern of the discretion window opening in one direction for certain players and staying closed for others. Here is the split path this leaves you with. Either the officials in cases 1 and 2 were wrong, the rule was consistently misapplied across the season, and Scotty's ruling was actually the correct one that finally got it right. Or the officials in cases 1 and 2 applied the rule exactly as they understood it. The standard was clear, and what Scotty received on that final Sunday was something those other players simply were not offered. One of those two things is true, and here is why the tour's silence on this specific question matters more than anything in their official statement. Because if it is the first option, they should be correcting the record on cases 1 and 2 right now, loudly, specifically, with names and tournaments attached. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think the PGA Tour should publicly explain how these rulings compare? Or does the silence tell you everything you need to know? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want to see where this story goes next, subscribe now, because the next piece of this puzzle could change the entire picture. They have not done that, which leaves the second option sitting in the room, waiting for someone to say its name out loud, and that someone is not Scotty Scheffler, which is important to understand, because this section is not an attack on him. Scotty Scheffler is the world's #1 player, because he is exceptional at golf, not because of rulings, not because of officials, not because of systems that may or may not tilt in directions that benefit the tour's most commercially valuable asset. He won tournaments before this controversy. He will win tournaments after it, but he is now the face of a question he did not create. And that position is one of the more revealing things about how this whole situation unfolded. Because when the controversy landed, Scotty became the reference point. Every conversation about the ruling ran through him. Every fan opinion attached to his name. The institution that made the call stepped back, and the player who received it absorbed the weight of a decision that was never actually his to make. That is not an accident. Institutions are very good at producing visible faces for controversies they would prefer not to own. Scotty, at the press conference, was composed, professional, and carefully general. He acknowledged the situation existed without entering its specifics, and whether that was his legal team's guidance, his own instinct, or simply the behavior of someone who genuinely believes the ruling was clean and does not understand why anyone is still talking about it. That question does not have a clean answer, but the tour's response does have one, and it is the most revealing thing in this entire story. The statement came, measured, precise, built by people who understand exactly how much information to release and exactly how to arrange it so that the release feels complete without actually being complete. They confirmed the ruling happened. They confirmed the official was certified. They confirmed the process followed established procedure. 3 confirmations, each one technically true, each one carefully aimed at the questions that were easiest to answer. And then nothing, no mention of comparable situations, no reference to how this specific type of ruling had been handled across the rest of the season, no acknowledgement that the question fans were actually asking, the one this video started with, had even been heard. The artifact decode here is simple once you see it. Official statements about controversial rulings contain 2 categories of language, what they say and what the structure of what they say forces you not to ask. The tour's statement was engineered around the second category. Every word in it was true. The total picture it produced was incomplete in a very specific direction. The direction of consistency, the direction of precedent, the direction of whether another player standing in that same spot on that same Sunday would have walked away with the same result. They answered the procedural question. They left the fairness question completely untouched. And now that question belongs to every other player on tour. Because if the system bent once, they need to know whether it bends for them too. Scotty cheated. That question was never the right one, and the people asking it loudest probably knew it. The real question is the one the tour's statement was built to avoid, the one Scotty's press conference carefully did not answer. and the one that every other player who fought through that FedEx Cup season is now sitting with privately, whether they will say so publicly or not. Would another player have received that ruling? Not a hypothetical player, not a journeyman making a cut on the number, a real player, a player also in contention on that Sunday, a player whose name does not anchor broadcast packages, does not move sponsor conversations, does not represent the tour's most critical commercial narrative at the most financially pressured moment in the organization's recent history. Would that player have gotten yes? Because if the answer is yes, if the ruling was genuinely clean, genuinely consistent, genuinely the correct application of a rule that had simply been misapplied in earlier cases, then the tour has a straightforward path out of this. Show the work, name the comparable situations, demonstrate the consistency. They have not done it, and that silence is not nothing. In an organization with the resources, the legal infrastructure, and the communications apparatus of the PGA Tour, silence on a specific question is never accidental. Silence is a decision. Silence means someone looked at the answer to that question and decided the answer was more dangerous than the silence. Go back to that moment. The gallery is going quiet. The ruling is coming fast. Scotty played on while something in the air did not settle the way it should have. You were not wrong to feel it. What you were watching was not necessarily a player cheating. What you were watching was a system making a decision and dressing that decision in the language of procedure so that by the time anyone thought to question it, the tournament had moved on and the trophy was already in someone's hands. Did Scotty Scheffler cheat? No. Did he need to? That is the question the tour has not answered. That is the question the statement was built around. That is the question sitting in every comparable ruling from this season where a different player heard a different word. Golf is a sport that asks its players to call penalties on themselves when nobody is watching. The question this scandal leaves behind is simpler and more devastating than any cheating accusation. Who calls the penalty on the tour? Where are you watching from? And do you still believe the PGA Tour calls it the same for everyone? Drop your city in the comments, subscribe if this changed how you see it, and I will see you in the next one.